Hello, everybody. My name is Blake Robison, and with me today I have Bob Kesling, the Tennessee State Sportscaster of the Year. Welcome, Bob.
Blake, good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. All right, if you're ready, you want to jump right into it?
Sure.
All righty. So, how'd you get started in this field? Walk me through your path.
I fell into it. I was lucky. I wasn't planning on being a broadcaster. I didn't even major in broadcasting in college at Tennessee. But I'd played sports growing up and then came to Tennessee as a walk-on fullback in 1972. And I knew I wanted to do something in sports. And I got a summer job working for the old Knoxville Sox baseball team, a double A team that's now the Tennessee Smokies. And it was a summer job, and it paid $100 a week. And I put the flag up, and I cooked the hot dogs and sold tickets and did everything. And I started writing little 30-second voicers on the game, and I'd call them into all the radio stations that would answer the phone after midnight. And some of the stations are, and I did it because I wasn't getting paid to do it. I did it because I was hoping if we got more people to the games, maybe they would give me a raise. And so I started writing these little voicers, and one of the local radio stations, the number one station here in town, called me out of the blue and said, "We listened to your reports, and we were looking for a part-time sports guy. Are you interested?" I said, "Sure." So I was going to school, working for the baseball team, and working part-time at the radio station, and that's kind of how I got into broadcasting. And so it's nothing I planned. In fact, I majored again in public relations. I thought when I got the job with the baseball team, I was going to eventually be the general manager of the Chicago White Sox. But the broadcasting door opened, and I kind of followed that.
So, it reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you know Bob Rathbun of the Atlanta
Yeah.
Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
spoke to him a couple months ago, and he was like, if you hang around long enough, you'll get a job because he kind of was just hanging around doing, odd jobs. And then it's like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
it,
Well, I met Bob back when he was doing Old Dominion women's basketball, and I was doing the Tennessee Lady Vols. So we'd all go to the Final Four every year, and we'd hang out. So Bob and I have been good friends since the '70s, and that's true. And another thing that I always live by too, Lindsey Nelson, the Hall of Fame broadcaster, who was from Columbia, Tennessee, and of course started the Vol Network, and then went on to his national career. But when he retired, he came back to Knoxville and lived up on Cherokee Bluff above campus. And he did little vignettes at our TV station that I was working at. And so I got a chance to pick Lindsay's brain a lot, which was a great classroom. I mean, can you imagine you're 27 or 28 years old and you're just enough, starting out sportscaster, and you walk into your sports office in the afternoon and Lindsey Nelson is sitting there reading the newspaper? I mean, it was incredible. But Lindsay told me, and when you get in this business, you're going to get one break, and are you ready for the break? Have you worked hard enough? And I followed that and tried to work hard. And I found out the harder I worked, the more doors that opened. And that's kind of the way it is in life. And that certainly was in my broadcasting career.
it's interesting to see that everybody kind of their philosophy, it's like put in the hard work or just say yes, show up. It all kind of is a little similar, but each person has their own little different path. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I've always said there are a lot of great broadcasters that are selling insurance or being stockbrokers because they didn't understand that it's a process and you've got to learn how to do this and you get better as you go along. But you can't just come right out of college and just suddenly think you're going to knock the door down and be this huge success in broadcasting. It just doesn't work like that. You've
yeah.
got to learn how to do it. You got to pay your dues. I mean, I know that's a cliche and everybody hates it, but that's true. You've got to start and figure out what your style is and how you're going to prepare to do broadcasts, how you're going to prepare to do games, and that takes a while. And but if you keep working at it and you don't get discouraged, because when you come out of college, you don't go out right out and buy a BMW and those type of things. You've got to kind of work your way up. And as long as you don't get discouraged, then if you work hard enough, doors do open.
Um, I mean, that's great. That's going to be a little reminiscent of the last question you're going to hear, but we've got a few in between.
Okay.
So you've got a pretty cool job at a pretty cool school. I'm wondering what's like the biggest unexpected or crazy or just interesting thing that's happened to you in your career, or because there's got to be something I'm thinking.
Well, I've had a lot of great opportunities, but I think one of my breakthroughs, one of the things that really helped get my career pushing forward, because I'd been at 1980, I went to Channel 10 here in town, and I was doing the Lady Vols and working on the Vol Network and doing some baseball on the side, but I hadn't really moved up a lot. And Pat Summitt, I went to lunch with Pat Summitt, and people forget that Pat went to 7 Final Fours before she won her first championship. And so it's not like she was this overnight success. And after she'd won the '84 Olympics, most people thought, including me, that what's better than that, and that she would probably retire. But so I took her to lunch and I asked her, I said, how come you didn't, after the Olympics, I thought you were going to start and have your family and do all that. She said, well, I wanted to win that championship at Tennessee, and we knew we were close, and I broke everything down and kind of reevaluated how we recruited, how we practiced. Um, who we were getting on our staff and nutrition and all the everything. And I broke it down and built it back up. And she said I went to see Phil Jackson because he was running the triangle offense with Michael Jordan. We had Shamika Holzclaw, and I wanted to run those plays. And she said I was always a full-time man-to-man coach, but I knew I had to get over the hump. I was going to have to play zone sometimes. So she went to visit with Jim Boeheim and learned all those type of things. And so I was fascinated by that. And so I kind of asked her, I said, I need kind of motivation. I kind of feel like I'm kind of stuck in the same job for a long time. And I wouldn't ask him to call anybody, but she leaned across the table and gave me the stare, the famous Pat Summitt stare. And she said, my guess is the reason you're not getting promoted or moving up is that you're not good enough, which kind of hit me in the head with a hammer. I mean, I wouldn't expect. She said, "Now I think you're good, but we put your broadcast over all our game film. So I listened to every one of your games, and I think you do a great job. But somebody doesn't. You need to work harder and get better, and you need to start tonight." I mean, same thing she would tell one of her players, and that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I started taking it to heart and started really trying to get better and better and better. And the next year, I got a call from Jefferson Pilot and started doing SEC basketball and football games on television. So the hard work paid off, and I got a break. And then I did that for 10 years, and then Tennessee called after John Ward retired. So I found that Pat Summitt's the same words she would tell her players, she told me, work harder, and that's what you have to do in this business.
So with that frame of time where you were told the hard but I mean needed
Yeah.
breaking news, was there a moment where you realized like, oh, I've got this? Like, what did you kind of did that hit you at one point?
No, no, I
No.
don't think it ever does. I think if you're ever satisfied with one of your broadcasts, and if you ever go back to your broadcast and you listen to it, and you don't say, "Gosh, I wish I would have said that," or "I wish I could have made that better," or "That call could have been better," then you probably need to quit because I think that all of us are trying to get better with every single broadcast, and you're trying to do something a little bit different. And so I think anybody that's any good in this business is very critical of their broadcasts and looking for ways to get better, and that's what I've tried to do.
And now, do you go back through every broadcast, or where's the dissection? Is it all the time, or
Well,
just
I'll go occasionally, but I don't listen to all of them. Let me
you gotta stay sane?
shut off my phone. I'm sorry. Um, I don't go through now and listen to every single broadcast, but I do listen to bits and pieces. If there's some call that I know that maybe I didn't do it quite as well, I'll go back and listen to those and scrutinize them. But and I listen to a lot of football too, so I'll go back and listen to those games. And I'll be at the office working on notes, and I'll have one of the old games, previous week's game on in the background, and just kind of listen a little bit. So I think you have to stay on top of yourself. I think you have to. Uh, because you want, none of us want to get to the point where we're slipping and people think, gosh, he's not very good anymore.
Yeah.
We all want to keep getting better. And I think you have to listen to your work to make sure that you're getting better. And I think like that's like in any profession. You got to monitor yourself and make sure that you're moving forward and not standing still.
So with the improvisation and adaptability of your craft, have you found yourself throughout your career like you've kind of taken some phrases or sayings from other broadcasters and kind of molded them into your own? Because a lot of people I've talked to, they've always kind of have somebody they drew inspiration from and have a variation of a call.
Yeah, I've tried to stay away from that. John Ward was an artist when he was doing the games at Tennessee, and he had a lot of catchphrases and he had a lot of John was a marketing guy, and John was in the advertising business. He did radio, basically freelancing. I mean, it was just kind of like his hobby, but he was really good at it. But he had this flair for, and he got his law degree, but he never practiced law. But he had that vocabulary, so he could always pick out that perfect word. But he had a lot of catchphrases and a lot of phrases that people that listen to the games, I mean, really enjoyed. But I stayed away from that. When I was talking to Doug Dickey, the athletic director who hired me, he said, "No, listen, I'm not hiring John Ward. I'm hiring Bob Kesling. So do these games the way you think they ought to be done." So I haven't. I think catchphrases kind of, if you practice them and rehearse them, they don't work. They have to be something that comes out and somebody will repeat it back to you. And I said something several years ago when somebody was running a long touchdown pass before he got to the end zone. I said, "Well, you can crank up Rocky Top now, touchdown Tennessee." Well, I walked out of the stadium and about three people said, "That's a great call." Well, okay, so they liked it, and then you keep doing it, and you don't want to wear it out, but you keep doing it. But I think catchphrases are things that you just have to that you have to come upon yourself, and usually it's people that repeat them back to you. Then you know you've clicked on something special.
I like that, just letting it come about naturally. And
Yeah.
I'm going to shift. I want to go to a fun question.
Okay.
So if you were to call any game or any sport or event for that matter at any venue, do you have an ideal combination in mind?
Wow, that's a
Great
good.
question.
That's a great question. I had when I came out of college and I started in this business, I really had three things that I checked that I wanted to do. One was I wanted to do network television. Number two is I wanted to be the voice of a particular team. Didn't really matter what sport, but I wanted to be the voice of. And I wanted to do Major League Baseball. Well, I got to do some Nashville Sounds games, so I got and the Knoxville Blue Jay games and Sox games here. So I did minor league baseball, but I never got to the big league. So I guess since I'm a big Cincinnati Reds fan, growing up in Dayton, that my dream job would be to do a Yankees Reds game at Yankee Stadium. Not sure that's ever going to happen, but that would be my dream job, I think.
That's awesome. So now I'm going to shift back, but I had to throw the fun one in there. But
Okay.
I love the answer though, because I feel like it always kind of goes back to your childhood a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
uh, that's where my dreams would stem from is what did, 10-year-old Blake want to do? Um, but so you talked about your connections with the teams and the programs just a little bit. I want to go into that a little bit more. At a school like Tennessee, what's it like to you kind of feel like you're connected to the players, the fans, the community. I mean, what's
Mhm.
that like? Because that's a pretty unique environment to be a part of.
Yeah, it's special when you're the voice of a particular school. There is that bond there, and when I came here in '72 as a walk-on fullback, I didn't know anybody on the team. I didn't know anybody in the state of Tennessee. I only met Coach Bill Battle for about 5 minutes, and Kurt Watson and Don McCleary, the freshman running back coaches. So I didn't really know anybody. And then to flash forward since 1972 and sit here and be the voice of Tennessee athletics, it's pretty remarkable and pretty overwhelming. And so I don't take it for granted. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I've gotten this opportunity. I feel blessed. In our business, and a lot of guys that are probably going to listen to this, you have to move around. I mean, you got to go where the jobs are. So, and sometimes you got to uproot your family, and then you got to sell houses and do this. I've been fortunate. We've been in the same house for 35 years, and we've never had to uproot our kids. They've never had to change schools or any of that or move to a different town. And I've been able to stay here in Knoxville and do so many great things. And so I've been really fortunate and really blessed with how this career has come about. And there is a bond that you get with coaches and players. And, I've been fortunate when I've been doing the games to come across guys like Eric Berry and Chris Lofton and Dane Bradshaw and just down the list. So many special players that have been so great to me and helped me Allen Houston when I was doing games. And so anyway, it's been a tremendous run for me. I mean, I can't think of anything else I'd rather have done than this. And it's been a lot of fun. And as you know, doing the games is the fun part of it. And so I just feel very fortunate that I've had this opportunity.
Yeah, I see a trend. Those I've talked to, they're all more local guys like yourself. They love it. I mean, they love it's a sense of community of almost family with the players, the coaches, the community. So I think that's a lot of thing people don't necessarily notice. They're like, I want to be Tarico and Collinsworth and Michaels and that's great. But I think there's a special value to a gig like yours or even smaller. I mean, that whole state
Yeah.
level, I think there's something
Yeah,
special.
and when I was doing the Jefferson Pilot games, and so you're all over the Southeast, and but I was also doing local sports on the TV station. So I had that local community and people in around Knoxville, exactly knew who I was, and I just it was funny. You'd go to the McDonald's or go to the cleaners, and it's hey Bob, what's going on? I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It's just part of the fabric here in town. And then you go out and do the regional network stuff with Jefferson Pilot, and then you get that bigger reach a little bit. But I don't think you could take anything away from uh, being a part of a community. And so I'm involved with some charities here in town, and involved with the local sports hall of fame. And so you just want to try and get back when you can. And you can do that when you've got an identity in the community.
And that's what it's all about. Now, you've talked about this a little bit. You've thrown some nuggets about this last question that I have for you. So, an aspiring broadcaster or somebody that wants to get into sports media, maybe a young professional like myself, what's your advice for them? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but any
Mhm.
last nuggets you have?
Get reps. I don't care what you broadcast, whether it's lacrosse or soccer or volleyball, whatever it is, the fundamentals of broadcasting are the same. Get behind a mic. There's so many guys, young people, that they say, "Well, do you want to do the game?" Well, Friday night we got a party, and I don't know if I can be there to pull cables or what. Well, if you want to be this, you've got to pull cables on Friday nights and you've got to get in. And showing up is 90% of the getting started. Just being there and being reliable and that they can count on you to do what you say you're going to do. And don't suddenly, the 2 days before a Friday night volleyball game, say, hey, I need to go home this weekend because there's a function at my old high school or something like that. Because then they won't count on you anymore. So be there when you can count on them. So that's what I always say. Showing up is 90% of it. And then when you get there, do the best job you can. And again, when you're young, really listen to your stuff and try and get better because you might think you're, oh, well, this is a perfect story. When I fell into doing lady ball basketball back when Pat Head was before she was Pat Summit. And it basically fell in my lap because one of our a radio station in town wanted to do their postseason games, and nobody else wanted to do them. It's women's basketball, for goodness sake, back in the late 70s. So I said, well, I'll do them. And because I thought it was SEC basketball. And so I'm just out of college and I think I'm, on my way to this big career. And so we were doing a doubleheader game at Stokely Athletic Center and they had a broadcast ramp up there. So John Ward was doing the second game, the men's game, and I was finishing up the women's game, the preliminary game. So I took a tape recorder and I recorded part of the game and went up to John and I said, "Mr. Ward, would you mind critiquing my tape?" He said, "No, I would love to do that." So I handed him the tape and he put it in his orange briefcase and he shut it and he said, "I'll be back, be back in touch with you." And he sat down and then started his pregame show on the Vol Network. Well, I hadn't heard from him. So about 2 weeks later, I went back up to him. Again, we had a doubleheader game. And I said, "Mr. Ward, do you have a chance to critique my tape?" And he said, "Yes, yes, I did." And he walks over, opens up his orange briefcase, gets the tape out, hands it to me, and says, "Try advertising." And he turned and walked away. And so he gave me a pretty good message that I'm not this hot shot that's got this thing whipped and has this thing figured out. And if I want to do broadcasting, I need to get better. And then he critiqued me later and he told me some of the things he really wanted me to work on. And that really helped me. So it's been great. But Blake, with this, we have a fabulous and you talked about reaching out in the community and having an impact on people. I'll close with the story unless you got another question. But we went have what's called the Big Orange Caravan here, and so we take the coaches out and we go around the state and we basically a big pep rally, and the coaches all talk about their upcoming seasons and everything. And so we're up in Kingsport, And this young man wanted to meet me. And I said, sure. So, that's what this thing's all about. So we walk over and he's up by the front door and he had a cane. And it turned out he was blind and he was in the early 20s. His name was Ryan. And I said, Ryan, I'm Bob Kesling. Oh, I'm so glad to meet you. So that you're how I listen and follow Tennessee sports, and you're my big link. And I've been blind since I was born, and so I've never been able to really, you know, see Tennessee football or this kind of stuff. So the radio is the only way I listen to the games and understand what's going on. I said, well, that's amazing. I said, where are your folks? Who are you here with tonight? Oh, I took an Uber. You took an Uber? Yeah, well, yeah, I Uber every place. So he'd gone by himself to this thing, and I asked him. I said, "Have you ever been to a Tennessee football game?" He said, "No, I've never gone to a Tennessee football game." I said, "Would you like to go?" He said, "I'd love that." I said, "Well, we'll make that happen." So I got him a press pass, and his grandmother and her husband brought him to the game. I got them tickets. And so Ryan got to sit on our booth up on the third row, and he had his headset on, and he had one ear with the broadcast, and he took this one other off so he could hear the crowd and hear the fireworks and hear the band. He'd never heard the band play. And I'd look up there every once in a while, and he had a big smile on his face. And so after the game was over, I had to hurry down to do the post game stuff in the locker room. And I said, Ryan, how did you like it? Oh, this was unbelievable. Said, really? I said, yeah, I've never heard the band or the excitement. And I could really feel them when they ran through the tee and all of that. And I said, well, that's really special. And he looked at me and said, this is the greatest night of my life. I mean, that's pretty special. So there is some magic in what we do. And we never should take that for granted. And we can really help people and affect people. And we have to understand that and not waste that power, but do what you can to pay it forward. And we play a role in a lot of people's lives, bringing the story of whatever team we're calling. And we need to make sure we never forget about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that if you've ever thought you were in the wrong profession, I think that moment alone would be like, this was it. This was the right decision.
Oh, yeah, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So it was a great moment. And Ryan and I have stayed in contact too. I'm trying to get him to a basketball game. I'm not sure that's going to work, but we're going to try and get him there.
Well, I'm gonna leave it to you. I'm gonna put the floor is yours. Is there anything else you want to say? It's all yours. If not,
Well, Blake, I appreciate you reaching out and appreciate the association for honoring sportscasters and sports writers all over the country. And it's a great profession. It really is. And you can reach people. We all enjoy the games; those are fun. But we need to realize that we are also providing a huge service for people. And I kind of pinch myself every day, and every time I go in the booth, what a great opportunity I've had to do this. So I appreciate you reaching out, Blake. You good to talk to you.
absolutely.
See you at the banquet or the convention or whatever we have over in Greensboro.
Yes, I appreciate you, Bob, and once again, congratulations, Tennessee Sportscaster of the Year.
Thanks, Blake.
Thank you.